I'm Korstiaan Vandiver, writer, producer, director. I was always artsy, but I think film really hit me there was a rough period where I was homeless. And I was homeless and I was trying to figure out what to do. And one day I went to a dollar theater, actually not too far from here. And I went to this dollar theater and I watched a movie, can't remember what it was, and I fell asleep in the theater. And when I woke up, it was closed. And I was like, oh my God, this place is closed. I don't know what to do. And I went out and I was like, there's no alarm, there's no nothing. And it was like popcorn and drinks on the counter. And I was like, wait a minute. I got a safe, like warm place. And I remember like just saying, okay, until stuff turns around, this is going to be my routine to figure it out because I hadn't been sleeping in my car or whatever. And I was like afraid of that. And in the process, I think it just reignited this flame with me for film. So I think homelessness actually ignited this thing in me to want to do movies. I was in the music business first, and I think honestly that's why I cultivated a skill set for telling stories. I mean, we all as Black people just tell stories. I mean, it's just something we do as a culture. I think everybody does. I really believe like God just gifted people with narrative, and narrative is what drives us. The Bible is a narrative. If you read it, in my opinion, properly, it's a narrative, and then in that narrative, you get a story, right? And so for me, I was rapping, and I was rapping at a very young age for a long time and doing music, and I would do these shows and do different things, and ultimately, I got into the business, and then I got behind the camera, or I should say behind the scenes in music. And my boss, this is a true story, my boss had a party, and this guy named, shout out to James Andrews, who really hooked me up in the music business. And he had a party, went to this party, and he got there early, and he says, hey, my uncle's in the kitchen, don't talk to him. James is like half Black, or he's Black and he has like this other side of his family, and he was like, yeah, he's white, he's racist, and he's blind. And I was like, He said, don't go talk to him. He's the first person I'm going to talk to. So I beeline to the kitchen. I talked to this guy. And at the time, I was kind of messing around with writing a script. And so I pitched the script to him. And I'm talking, and 45 minutes later, after I finished this pitch, he grabs me. And he says, the story was called Son. And it was about it was like a modern day story of like Christ, but it was like hip hop infused, and like Mos Def was supposed to be like Christ. It was like really wild, and like Jersey was Jerusalem. It was like really wild. But he grabbed me and he says, I mean, it's crazy. He says, he's like, this is weird for lack of a cliche or a better phrase. He was like, I was blind and now I see. And I was like, what? I'm sorry. I think the first thing he said I was a racist, and I'm not anymore. And I was like, I don't think I am anymore. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I was an atheist, and I don't think I am anymore. And he's like, for lack of a better phrase, I was blind and now I see. And I was like, what? And he was like, you just told me a story about a Black hip hop Jesus, and I believed it. And he was like, let me tell you, I went blind sitting in a movie theater watching Before Sunset with Ethan Hawke. And he was like, my eyes literally just closed and I became angry. He's like, I was a screenwriter. He was like, come to New York, I'm gonna teach you how to write screenplays, and come live with me. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And I didn't take him up on his offer. I thought about it, but what I did go home and say was, I was like, I think like God has given me something that I really need to explore. Like, I think maybe I am good at this. I was just kind of messing around. And that was, I think, the moment that I said, okay, I want to try this. After that story, I decided to do my own project. And I had gotten like a kind of a assistant gig with it was a local filmmaker here, a guy named Andre Buckner, who was doing like these B movies, like B action movies. And he he asked me to be his assistant. I told him I wanted to do film. I met him, and I was already working on this thing I had written, and I gave it to him like my first day just to get some advice. So I was like, hey, can you read this? And I went off and doing whatever task, and when I came back, he sat me down in his office. He's like, yeah, we need to talk. And I was like, oh man, was it that bad? And he was like, look, I know this is gonna be really weird, but I'm gonna have to let you go. And I was like, oh man, are you serious? Like, it was really that bad? Are you firing me? And he was like, look, he was like, you're really good. He's like, you're better than me right now. And if I don't let you go, you'll never do what you're supposed to do. And so I'm not gonna be selfish. I think you need to go try to do whatever you need to do right now. And I was mad. I was like, this is BS. Like, he's just making up stuff. He don't want me to hear it. But I went home and I put what I wrote on the internet on Craigslist. And like it was like 2 hours later, I had like, oh gosh, it was like 60 inboxes or something. Because I had put out this kind of character breakdown of these characters that I wanted people to do a short with. And I didn't specify it was a short. And I got a call from a producer who had done this like really kind of like, gosh, it was kind of like a cult movie that was kind of underground with kids who like into like street stuff. It's this movie called Shotters. And I was like, he was like, I did this movie called Shotters. I did something. I was like, oh, I know that movie. He was like, yeah, I want to help you produce your project. He made some offer. And it was a big offer, but I turned it down. I was like, nah. I was like, we have a business. I'll just try to make it on my own. I can do stuff on my own. And I hung up, and he called back. I think I hung up again the second time on that offer, and then he called again, and he offered like $500,000, and he offered me like a 50-50 deal. And I was like, actually offered me 49-51 deal, which meant he would be 49 and I would be 51, and I'd still have control of everything. And I was like, okay, let's talk. But the thing was, he was like, send me the script. I was like, yeah, give me like 3 days or so. I need to polish it up. And I hung up and I was like, I only got like 20 pages. This is a short film. And I wrote for 3 days. And I finished that feature and I sent it to him. And he struck a deal with me. And then he became my manager. And then he decided he wanted to try to produce a project. And him and his partner came on. They put up like $900,000 or almost $1 million, and I thought it was gonna be great. And they did a budget breakdown of the script. It was like $40 million. And it was like, there's no way we could do this movie. And then a big time producer came and he wanted it. He had done like really fantastic movies like Catch Me If You Can and I, Robot, and some really huge movies. And I was like, oh, this is it. And he offered a ludicrous offer, which I will not repeat, because if I would have gotten an offer, it would probably make me the highest paid person for a script in Hollywood ever. And I just don't think people would believe that. And so he offered this money and everybody started fighting. Except me. I was like, sell it. Like, it wasn't that good. There's no way it was that good. I was like, sell it. It was my first script. Like, please, sell it. And they argued and wouldn't relinquish control until the deal fell apart. And at that point, I moved. I was like, I said, we got to go our separate ways. And that kind of propelled me to LA, and that's another story. Steven Spielberg had a reality show. I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but I can't. But he had a reality show, and I made the second round. And that gave me enough courage just to see if I would make it. And I just packed my stuff up, and I hopped in the car, and I was just like driving, saying, I'm going to make this show. And I think I got to Arizona, and there was a snowstorm. And I was like, I'm just going to wait it out for a couple hours and keep driving. And then I was in that hotel, and I got a text, and I hadn't made the show. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to LA. And I went to LA. And I ended up immediately getting a job to write. And so my first paid job was writing this script about John Legend. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Didn't know the ins and outs of the business. All I knew was I was getting a check. And then it turned out these people didn't have rights to this story. And we had to figure out how to make it work. I think they already knew. I mean, maybe they didn't tell me the whole story, but the bottom line was it turned into a documentary. And they, I moved on, ended up at a production company because I became a PA. And a friend had brought me out to somewhere and was like, hey, you want a PA? I was like, yeah. She's like, when you meet the producer, just say yes to everything. And I did. And by the end of the week, he had promoted me 6 times. I think I went from PA to like camera assistant to the camera truck driver to, by the end of the week, I was the producer's assistant. And they ended up, I talked to them about actually wanting to do my first short. And this guy, I didn't know he owned a lighting company. And he took me out to his lighting company. And he opened up, I had my production vehicle was this Dodge Magnum. And he opened it up. And he threw all these lights and stuff in the back. He was like, this is yours. You use it, And he introduced me to a director. And the director's like, you can have my crew and I'll give you my drive. But it's expensive, so I need you to bring it back. It's like $2,000, so bring it back when you finish. So when I finished the short, I went to meet him. He was just moving off the Universal lot. And he was like, hey man, I need somebody to work for me. He was like, I got a show on Stars and I need somebody, can you edit? And I was taking these classes at Time Warner. Time Warner used to have this production program. Same one, actually, Oprah took the same program. Oprah did one in Chicago. They had one in LA. I don't know if they had any anywhere else, but I went through that same program. And I told him, yeah, I was like, yeah, I want to work here. And he was like, I need an editor. I was like, sure, I know how to edit. I was working on iMovie. He was telling me, Avid. I was like, yeah, I know Avid. Not really thinking, just not being dishonest, just not thinking, just thinking it was all the same thing. And when I got in the car and I was driving, I called my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, hey, I just got this job editing Avid. I don't know Avid. And I went to Borders and I got Avid for Dummies. And I started studying it. I read the whole thing. I made notes and sticky notes. And on Monday, I came in and I had stuff written on my hands and sticky notes in my shirt. And I went in there into the booth, and he was like, make a bin, open this, move these files. And I was reaching and pulling stuff. And he, when he wasn't looking and typing, and he was like, yeah, you know what you're doing. And he slapped me on the shoulder and walked out. He's like, you got the job. And I collapsed on the keyboard. And I was like, thank you, God. And that was the beginning of me starting at Stars for that production with Martin Lawrence. And it was a show called First Amendment Stand Up. Lou is about a PTSD veteran who he's just been suffering. He's left Iraq. It's based on a true story. And he's kind of locked himself down in a hotel. And he's suffering with, dealing with killing a woman's family. And he also shot this woman, and he basically gets the idea to search this woman out and ask for her forgiveness. And so that's what Lewis is. This is a true story. A guy named Luigino Labello. And so I read the story in the New York Times. I'm really good with connecting with people, talking to people, especially when it comes to being interested in stories. And so I reached out to Lou after reading the story in the New York Times via Facebook. And it's funny because that's how he ends up finding this woman, by using Facebook. And so social media is gold a lot of times. And I reached out to Lou, and Lou contacted me, and we spoke. And he was like, man, a lot of people asked me to do a movie. Like a lot of people, big studios, big companies, I turn them on now. He's like, it's just something about you. I don't know what it is. You're just nice. It was like most of the people I talk to just aren't even nice. And so I want to do it with you because you've been nice to me. And I was like, wow, I'll take it. And we set it up. And from there, I had done the 168 Film Festival before, and I had placed in that festival, so I was familiar with it. But I knew this time that I had this story that I wanted to do. And 168 is like this international film festival that's faith-based. And so what happens is they have these people from around the world who come in, sometimes 200 to 300 different teams, and you have to stand in a line, and they'll turn over these stones they pull out of a box, and there's a random scripture. You have to make a movie about it. So the only rules they have is if you're doing a true story, you can know that you want to do a true story, and you better hope that rock will match up with what you get, and you can't write anything. So I talked to Lou probably about 3 months out, so we knew. And then I started searching for who was going to be Lou. And so my partner and I, Dwight Wilson, was one of the producers on it, and we partnered on the company Intervision Filmworks. And so Dwight was the CEO of Intervision Filmworks, and I was his partner. And we started searching. We ended up getting a meeting with like Gerard Butler's people, and I was like, "This is amazing," and hopefully do it. And he was just seemed like he was way too big, and I got that. They never even told us no. I think we just realized they weren't going to do this, and we kind of kept dragging our feet. And so we went to another EP producer who ended up being an executive producer on the project and giving up some money, but he had a relationship with Jeremy Renner, and Jeremy Renner was shooting American Hustle in Boston, and they got everybody on the phone and representation, and they started talking, and we were trying to see if we could do this, and Jeremy Renner was actually interested. And I was like, this is crazy. And he was a very like humble person, very cool person. He was having a baby. His girlfriend, he was like flying back to LA, and he was talking about eating at In-N-Out, and like versus like the Ritz-Carlton where like the EPs wanted to go. So he was just a really cool person, but it didn't happen. Like they had the baby, which was a beautiful. I can't remember what they had, but it was a beautiful baby. And then he went back to Boston, and we of course couldn't mess with the schedule of a director that huge, and somebody was paying that much money. And I asked Lou, I was like, Lou, can I do this project with the African American? Would you mind? And I had already spoken to Amari Hardwick, who we had been friends, and more so Amari and I had been friends. We would do Derek Luke. The actor Derek Luke had this thing, and a lot of people in the industry went to called Giant Killers, where it's like this faith-based kind of get together. And he was like a preacher, him and his wife, and Amari would be there with his wife. And we started praying for each other. And Amari had lost a child like early on, which he's been candid about now. And we would pray about the loss of his son, and just connected. Like he reminded me like a friend, and I reminded him. He said of one of his brothers. And so we just ran into each other randomly one day, and I told him what I was doing. He was like, "Man, I want to do that." And so initially, he was supposed to play Lou, and then he ended up going to Miami. And I was like, wow, so now I got to call Nate and tell him he was like the third choice. But I called Lou, and Lou said he was down. Like I sent him like some work from Nate. I was like, this guy. He was like, he's fantastic. He was like, I don't care what he looks like. I just want the story to be told. And so I was like, great. I told Nate, and Nate was like, let me read the script. And then we went from there. And I mean, we went through, I think, 9 drafts, and Nate actually rewrote and did a polish on the 9th draft. And like the night before we went to shoot. And we shot it in 3 days. 3 days, technically 2 days and 15 minutes, because Omari was in Miami still. So initially we had shot him out. And I called him and I said, don't worry about it. You're in Miami, you can't come back. And he cursed me out. He was like, I said, I'm gonna do something, I'll do it. I want to be a part of this. I told you I was gonna be there. I'm gonna be there on the next thing smoking. I'll be there at 11:15 tomorrow. And we shot from 11:15 to 11:30 at the DP's house, and kind of manipulated to bring those 2 scenes together. And that was how we managed to keep Omari in the film as well. So. One, I'm passionate. I'm so passionate. I really love filmmaking. Like I spend like almost every waking moment, like reading, putting together stories, writing images, looking at cinematography, movies, TV, studying things, reading about thoughts of other filmmakers and producers and different things. I really love it. But in that love, I believe the passion is ignited because I believe that, like, literally God called me to do this. Like, I know that everything I've been a part of is because he put me there. Sometimes for the project, sometimes for the person, sometimes for both.